So, guys, when people talk about the Cowboys defense heading into 2026, all the attention is on the new additions and what Christian Parker is bringing to the table. And that's understandable because what we say in the previous season, everybody is assuming new defensive coach, new scheme, new pieces will make this defense look completely different. But here's what almost nobody is talking about. Sometimes the biggest surprise isn't a new signing or a rookie, it's a player who's already on the roster. Someone who quietly put together an impressive season yet somehow has been completely overlooked heading into training camp. And the crazy part is, once you look at his numbers, you'll realize just how dangerous he could be for opposing offenses this season. Dean, even though the rest of the NFL seems to be completely ignoring him. What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Okay, now let's be honest with each other for a second. It's safe to say this defense is not going to look like the one we watched take the field back in 2025. Think about this. Only 3 of the 11 starters from week 1 of last season are actually still on this roster for 2026. That's a massive turnover, guys. Some of the new faces came through free agency, some came through the draft, and everybody wanted to talk about them. But there are names that were already here last year, guys who played real snaps for this team, and I feel like they're getting completely buried under all the offseason noise heading into camp. And that's exactly what I want to dig into today. So, let's start with the obvious problem first, because you have to understand why before you get to the who. Last year, this pass rush was rough, I mean genuinely rough. The Cowboys ranked 26th in sack percentage. They ranked 24th in time to throw, 24th in total sacks, and 21st in time to pressure. Any secondary in this league, no matter how talented, is going to get exposed when the front 4 or front 7, whatever you want to call it, isn't getting home. That's just football. Coverage can only hold up for so long before somebody breaks open downfield. So, it makes sense why the front office went out and addressed it. They brought in Rashan Gary, they used a first-round pick on Malachi Lawrence. And last year, before all that, they had already put resources into the room with Donovan Ezeiruaku. All of that is the story everybody's telling right now. And look, it's a fair story to tell, it's a real one. But here's the thing. I was scrolling through the roster a couple weeks back, just doing what you do in that dead period right before training camp opens, and I saw a name that stopped me for a second. James Houston. And honestly, I had to ask myself, why haven't I talked about this guy all summer? I've talked about the edge room plenty. I've brought up Malachi Lawrence, I've brought up Rashan Gary over and over again. But James Houston, somehow, just fell out of the conversation completely. And that's a mistake, because Houston actually gave this defense real, legitimate pass rush production in 2025. Let's take a look at the numbers, because they tell a pretty clear story. Houston played 305 total snaps last year, but only 82 of those were actual pass rush snaps. And on just those 182 reps, he still finished with 25 total pressures and 5.5 sacks. Think about that for a second. That's not a guy who was out there all game long racking up numbers just by volume. That's a rotational piece who was genuinely productive every time he stepped on the field. He got home 5.5 times, added 10 quarterback hits on top of that, and those 25 total pressures work out to roughly a 13.7% pressure rate for a rotational edge rusher. That's useful, guys. That's a real juice. That's a guy who was affecting the quarterback, not just picking up a coverage sack because a receiver ran a bad route. And it wasn't just the eye test either, because the grades backed it up. According to PFF, Houston finished with a pass rush grade that ranked 42nd out of 1-5 edge players in the league last year. His run defense grade came in at 35 out of those same 11-5. Now look, that's not superstar level, nobody's saying that, but for a rotational edge, that's solid, that's genuinely good. And he wasn't just a pass rush specialist either, because he added 12 run stops and a forced fumble to go along with everything else. Now, here's what makes this whole thing even more interesting to me. Last season was Houston's best year since his 2022 rookie season when he had 8 sacks with the Detroit Lions. And people forget this part, but there was a real stretch of time where James Houston looked like a legit breakout star in the making. Then injuries hit in 2023 and 2024, and he basically disappeared. Over those 2 years combined, he played just 102 total snaps. That's almost nothing. So for him to come back in 2025, make the roster after nearly being out of the league entirely for 2 full years, and then go on to lead the team in sacks for most of the season until Jadeveon Clowney edged him out in the final week. That's a real comeback story that nobody's talking about. And I remember watching some of those games last year and wondering out loud why Houston wasn't on the field more, especially on 3rd and long. There were stretches where it genuinely felt like he was the only guy who could consistently get after the quarterback. I would have liked to see him play even more snaps than he actually got. So, you've got the big 2022 season, the 2 lost years to injury, and then a strong bounce back in 2025. Now, heading into 2026, I actually expect him to take another step forward. I'm not saying Pro Bowl. I'm not saying All-Pro. I want to be clear about that because I know sometimes when I talk about a guy like this, people think I'm saying every single player on this roster is about to become a superstar. That's not what this is. I'm talking about a guy getting his legs back under him, building his confidence, staying healthy through a full offseason program for the first time in a while. He's also got a brand new coordinator in Christian Parker, which means a clean slate with the entire coaching staff. Now, let me pull in a comparison here, because I think it actually helps explain why Houston's snap count might not even need to change much for him to be more productive. Go back to 2022 and 2023, when Dante Fowler had that exact same kind of role under Dan Quinn, back when this pass rush was really rolling. I went back and looked at his numbers from those 2 years. In 2022, Fowler played 343 total snaps, and 227 of those were pass rush snaps. In 2023, he played 271 snaps, and all but 65 of those were pass rushes. So, when you look at that usage pattern next to what Houston is working with now, with Rashan Gary, Donovan, and Malachi Lawrence all part of this rotation too, maybe Houston doesn't actually need more snaps this year at all. Maybe getting better just means seeing his efficiency climb on the same workload. Let's say he plays the exact same number of snaps in 2026 that he played in 2025, but his pass rush win rate climbs from that 7% up to say 16 or 17%. That's good for another sack or 2 right there, just from added consistency, and honestly, I could absolutely see that happening for him. Because here's the truth about a role like this. Just because a guy is winning at a high rate doesn't mean you need to hand him 500, 600, 700 snaps over a season. Eventually, that workload catches up to a player. The reps start getting watered down, fatigue sets in, and the production dips. I think Houston is at his best as a true rotational edge. Somebody you bring in on 3rd and long. Obvious passing situations may be part of a package built specifically to get after the quarterback. If you want a guy who can line up in one of those speed packages and just go get the passer, Houston's probably at the top of that list on this roster right now. And there's another angle to this too, guys. One that I think gets overlooked when people just look at snap counts. If this coaching staff wants to build one of those obvious passing down packages, the kind of thing where you basically load up the field with your best pure rushers on 3rd and long, almost like a NASCAR-style package built purely to get after the quarterback, then Houston fits that role about as well as anybody currently on this roster. He doesn't need 300 pass rush snaps to matter. He needs the right snaps. 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11. 2-minute situations where the quarterback has to get the ball out fast and everybody in the building knows a rush is coming. So, those are the reps where a specialist like Houston actually changes the outcome of a series, even if his overall snap count on the season looks modest on paper. Now, think about how crowded that outside linebacker room actually is right now. You got Sam Williams in that mix, and there's a real chance he doesn't even make this roster. You've got Marist Liufau in that same conversation, and he might not make it either. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. That's what real competition looks like on a roster, and honestly, it's exactly what a team needs if it wants to actually compete for a championship this season. I think Houston got a little lost in that outside linebacker conversation this offseason, but he's exactly the kind of player who could quietly make this roster and then go make a real impact once the games start counting. So that's the guy I wanted to bring to your attention today. Somebody I think has genuinely been overlooked heading into this offseason. I appreciate every one of you riding with this channel. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, go ahead and do that now. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.